But this is Lewis Hart for Boxing Social in association with Empire Fights on Arkeen's Competitions. Always a pleasure to be joined by Paul Smith here on a nice Tuesday morning. Yeah, Paul, it's busy times as Christmas comes to sort of come soon. But yeah, before that, how's things, mate? How are you?
I'm good, thanks, mate. It's the usual, stressed, busy, Christmas time coming up, kids everywhere. Good.
Absolutely, definitely, and yeah, I guess it is a busy week. One thing I guess firstly wanted to start on. It's obviously a fight week in Liverpool, which is always a good thing. Had quite a few fight nights in Liverpool this year, but yeah, I guess looking forward to Jonas Habazin on the weekend.
Yeah. Tasha's a friend. Tasha's a mate of mine, and always has been. She started off in the Thunder with us, and we ended up training with her as pros as well. I was coming to the very end then, but Tasha's a lovely person, good fighter as well. Let's have it right, and the city's right behind her, as are all the fighters in the city and the ex-fighters in the city. So it'll be good to go to the show on Saturday and see boxing in the pool's great. I love it in the pool. I've got a little coffee shop in town, and it's always busy when the boxing's on. People drop in and see us and pop in and come to see us. And it's a nice place, and it's a nice little atmosphere in the city. And it's not a local derby, so it's nice and chilled and relaxed. But yeah, I'll be there Saturday. I'm looking forward to a good night of boxing.
I was going to say I was going to ask you that. You mentioned the coffee shop there. Do you always feel like there's an increase when it is a fight? I know whenever I'm doing a fight week in Liverpool, I always pop along. So you must, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's an increase on the taken on the till on the numbers, but I just love it because I get to see a lot of people who are now and they pop in, and you know what it's like in the boxing. You all keep in touch on social media. You see what people are saying every single day, but you don't see people actually in person unless there's a show. So when there's a show in the pool, it's good.
Absolutely, definitely. And I guess you want to quickly move on. And one thing that was important to talk about yourself is obviously Global Fighters Union. Yeah, obviously it's been launched for almost a year now. But yeah, I guess sort of first thing first, how's things going with that and the launch and I guess getting things well underway?
Yeah, we've just been working behind the scenes, nice and quiet. There was no point in announcing things and trying to run before we could walk. We had to make sure we had everything in place, and we're still working at that. We're still plugging away and chipping away and trying to get all of the right facilities in place and the right things that we need and the right services in place and the right people. More importantly, the right people. This has been tried before many years ago from a boxing angle, from purely boxing, trying to do it, and we've done it from more from the union side and more from the legal, getting the legal stuff in place, the legalities right, and making sure that all the infrastructure is there, and we're doing it the right way. We've got the right people involved. We've got trade unions involved. We've got MPs and people who are involved in labour and business on the boards, just to make sure that it goes that way and that it goes the right way rather than just fizzling out pretty quick. Um, we've been speaking a lot with the PFA and other unions out there to try and not copy, but to try and sort of use the good things that they do right and not do the bad things, and just learn from them and make sure that we have the right system in place to get this done. And we just want to protect fighters. We want to make sure that the game is done properly, is run properly, is officiated properly. We're not against anyone, but we're not there to help anyone but fighters really, and make sure that everything that should be happening, that people assume is happening, actually is happening, rather than just the fighters being last on everyone's list as it has been for too often now.
Definitely, and that is something that I'll get into. But yeah, just touch on there. You mentioned that it's been tried before, and boxing's it's sort of in a weird space, where it's not like football. You haven't got the FA or you've got sort of these major governing bodies. Sort of in a way, people mostly do look after themselves. So how important are the aims for this, and sort of how is it important to get it right? As you say, you've got things like the PFA, but it is probably a little bit harder to do in boxing because of sort of the sort of the doors that open or the sort of the legalities around it.
Yeah, it was attempted years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I heard something that it was Barry McGuigan that maybe
Yeah,
started it or tried to start one. But if you haven't got the right people in place for anything, it's not going to work. If you want to start boxing, if you haven't got the right team around you, you're not going to make it in boxing. Doesn't matter how good you are. And I think what we want to do is, for me, I have to speak about it personally. For me, I was in court with a former manager. I've I've been called before the boxing boards a couple of times for ridiculous things, and one that maybe I should have. But it's one organization in this country that runs professional boxing. If you want a professional boxing license, you have to go to them. And if you want to be a professional boxer, you have to go through the Boxing Board of Control. But the Boxing Board of Control, they do a great job on a lot of things, and they do, in my opinion, a poor job on some things as well. And they have systems in place, rules in place, contracts in place. Some of the stuff that they're doing has been in place since the 70s or the 60s or however long it might be or might have been, but it doesn't mean that it's fair and for the boxer. Fees, I don't agree with sanction fees for governing bodies. I don't agree with the money that you have to pay to the Boxing Board of Control or to the governing body of the sport. Let's say the California State Athletic Commission. If you're in California, obviously Nevada, every state in the USA has their own commission, and it's run by the government. And when you're dealing with the California State Athletic Commission, for example, and I'm sending emails over to them, the replies that I'm getting back is csac.gov, and it's run by the government or government officials who oversee the sport in that jurisdiction. Over here, it's a private company and or a limited company or a charitable company or whatever company it is that's set up. And sometimes when you're at shows, there's inspectors there who don't really know what they're looking for, and well, especially when you're wrapping hands or something. I've given numerous examples of when we've been wrapping hands or watching hands being wrapped. Um, the fact that you have to send someone into the dressing room to watch you, the inspector should be enough. The official should be enough. If you're overseeing the rules of boxing, and we trust you enough to do that, then you should be enough. But everyone sends someone from the team in, and it's because you don't trust the inspectors or you don't trust
Mhm.
any of the officials that are there to see everything because they're not clued up enough, they're not educated enough, they're not on the ball, and sometimes it's not just a job. And we want to make sure that sorry,
No, you're good.
and we sorry, we someone's trying to call me, and we want to make sure that things like that are not happening. We want to make sure that the fighters are looked after, that the rules are adhered to, that the fighters are looked after financially or at least getting what they're worth financially. And we want to make sure that there's a lot of stuff in place there for fighters when they retire. And that's one of the biggest things that I'm passionate about, having retired myself and been retired for a while now. There's nothing in place for you when you retire. You have to you're fending for yourself. And most of the time you give your life to a sport and you give everything that you've got to that sport 100% because there's an old saying, isn't it, burn the boats. When you turn professional in boxing, you've got to burn the boats. You can't have a plan B. If you have a plan B, your plan A is not going to work, and you put everything into that plan A. And then when it's time to retire, it's just see you later. Thanks for everything, and on your way. And the next kid's coming through then. But it's a long road after retiring. It's a tough road after retiring if you haven't sort of prepared for it.
One thing you mentioned there, and it was something I wanted to touch on, like boxing is very much the Wild West, and it is a crazy game out there. And I'm sure yourself, you would have had promotional disputes and managerial disputes, and all your brothers would have had the similar things. So how important is it that you protect fighters from that? Because in this game, especially, the people that do probably come last, and the people that come last, or the people that get affected the most, are fighters. So is it important to, I guess, be protecting them from that Wild West, even through your own experiences from mismanagement, from managers and promoters?
Yeah, good question. Listen, if you're managing someone in a sport, and I'm not having a go at managers, but if you're managing someone if I wanted to go and manage a football and I'll be a football agent, I've been going to match since I was 5, but I don't know enough about football to do so. But I could blag it and bluff it and try my best to do it and try my best to try and get some form of license to do it. And that's going to be in every sport. That's not just boxing, but in boxing, there's a lot of people who are doing it and looking after fighters when they don't really know the game, they don't really know the sport, and they're just getting involved. There's lawyers who are out there who are doing it. There's professional footballers, retired footballers who are coming over to the boxing. There's all kinds of walks of life in boxing who are managing fighters or looking after fighters. And if you're doing a good job, great. If you're getting licensed, great. That's what we want. We want to see people, but you've got to know the sport. Sometimes the fighters are the only ones that really know the sport, and they're learning the sport from people who don't really know it. And then all of a sudden, the careers are falling by the wayside and they're not doing nothing in boxing, and they're left wondering why. And they've just been badly represented. And we see that all the time in sport. Had they been good, only I got trained bad. Had they been good, only I got managed bad. And we see it in all sports, but especially in boxing, it shouldn't be happening nowadays. And there's enough research out there. There's enough information out there. There's enough horror stories out there for people to look at. And there's enough good, success stories out there that people can look at. It can be done right, and it's just having the right people in place to do the job. And we feel that the union will oversee things to make sure that the right people are in place also.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned a good point there. And I guess it's sort of something I did want to touch on more in depth, as you say, like, when, especially with the board and licensing and this and that, there isn't sort of anything to sort of stop an advisor coming on board. And that advisor could sort of be from any sort of background of life. So it show, I guess, sort of more protection that, because as you say, anyone can really get involved in boxing, where that's how it is different to many other sports. So it's important to be protected of that because, anyone can really get involved regardless of their background in the sport, which is also a
Yeah,
good thing as well. That's
but I
also a
was
good
just
thing.
gonna, yeah, I was just gonna say that, Lewis. But look, there's some people out there who can't get licenses who know a hell of a lot more about boxing than people who have, and there's a loophole around the licensing to get a manager's license in the UK. And this isn't just manager license; I mean training license also. To get a trainer's license, you have to just go and do a course. You do a first aid course, and you get asked questions about boxing. You don't really get asked many questions. It's just a course that you do, and if you know a little bit, you're gonna breeze through it. And all of a sudden, you're a professional boxing trainer. You can go in the corner with fighters. Now, I don't really agree with that. I don't think that that's enough. I've done that course myself a few times now to renew it and to refresh it. The first aid course is absolutely top quality, and you learn CPR, you learn everything about injuries, and you get to know things about the brain or brain injuries and fighting injuries in particular. And I can't fault them. I can't fault the boxing ball for that. But the boxing element of it, how you can then go in a corner with a fighter in a world title fight if you wanted to, if you were asked to, when you've only done that course with them. I don't think it's enough personally. Now, I'm not here to criticize the board. The manager license, you have to have held another license for 3 years before you can apply for a manager's license. But you can go and get any form of license and just sit on it for 3 years and then go and get a manager's license. And listen, there's advisors out there and there's people out there who know more about boxing than 99% of the people who are getting in it have forgotten. And sorry, forgotten more about them than they know. And they're knowledgeable people and they haven't got licenses and they're looking after the fighters. And I have got no problem with that. None at all. It's not about getting them people out the game. It's about getting the wrong people out the game. The people who don't know the game, the people who've got no business managing fighters, businessmen who just want to get involved in boxing and they've watched it a few times on telly and they manage a local kid and they take the local kid and all of a sudden the local kid's getting thrown in a deep end and fight, he loses, he doesn't make a penny. And the businessman's sitting there wondering what's going on. It's because he doesn't know boxing and he can't guide fighters. There's other people out there in boxing at the moment who've come into boxing. There's some who haven't got licenses and they're doing absolutely brilliant with fighters, and they've got people looking after the fighters the right way. And there's loopholes around which there shouldn't be. We just want to make sure that we oversee things with the union and make sure that everyone's licensed right, everything's done right. But ultimately, be holding everyone to account and making sure that the game is run fairly. We just want transparency in the States. There's the Muhammad Ali Act. It's transparent. Everyone can see what everyone earns. Everyone can see what everyone does. Everyone can see everyone's job. And in the UK, it's just not like that no more.
Hmm. Definitely. But I guess now when it looks into 2025, is it as you push on, what are the aims, I guess, for the next after sort of a year of foundation, the next year, what would you like to sort of be done or the plans that get put in place?
We want to just keep putting these plans in place. We want to launch. We're launching now, and we want to slowly but surely start being more active and getting involved with the shows. If there's a big fight in Manchester, we want to be able to send a couple of ex-fighters to Manchester on behalf of the union to work and be alongside the boxing board of control, overseeing hands being wrapped. If I'm training my fight in the dressing room and I've got someone from an ex-fighter from Manchester, Liverpool, London, going in that opposite dressing room as part of the union, I trust them to watch other hands because they've been involved in the game for a long time. They've been professional. They've wrapped hands. They know how to wrap hands. They know what they're looking for. If it's not and it's an official, and this is all over the world, by the way, this isn't just in Britain. I've done it in the States. I've done it in Russia. I've done it everywhere where you've got officials from the boxing commissions in the dressing room watching hands being wrapped, and half the time they're having
Well,
a conversation with someone
we'll
else.
look at sorry to cut you off, but remember your brother Liam in
Yeah,
Spain with Kamala Haraja and JJ Metcalf, a great example.
yeah. That's one of the examples that was documented. But how many have gone undocumented? How many haven't had a camera in there? How many have had arguments and been told that, well, unless you let them wrap their hands that way, there's no fight, and then you're arguing over something that's illegal, and it's only going to be upheld, and if the official knows what he's looking for. That official was like, no, he hasn't done nothing wrong, and they will go and get the boss in, and when the boss come in, it got changed straight away. That's happened more times than I care to remember, and it shouldn't be the case. There should be an official who knows what they're looking for, who knows exactly what's going on, and it's just not the case. And that might be hard to find the right staff, but with the union, we'll definitely find the staff. We know the staff already. We know what staff will be able to see that, and it will be ex-fighters, or it'll be people who've been involved in the game for a long time, who know what they're looking for. And us being ex-fighters and being involved in the game still, we know what people to put in the right place to do that. Having the union with the right officials, the right staff, the right people on board who are willing to help the game and willing to see boxing and combat sports thrive for the better and for the fighters protected. They're there for the right reason with the right intentions. They're not there just to get a couple of gloves signed in the dressing room for a charity do on the weekends, or to get a selfie with one of the fighters just after he's got his hands wrapped. That's not happening with the union. That should never happen anyway, but it does, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, positive stuff there, I guess, from myself, from my view. It's good to see what is being done and what you are leading.
I think everyone should be, you know, if fighters are getting looked after, then everyone should be happier. And we're not against promoters, we're not against the boxing board control, we're not against television networks, we're not against anyone at all. We're with everyone. We want to oversee the sports, combat sports in this country and around the world, and make sure that it's done fairly. And there is no union for fighters, for boxers, and it's criminal that it isn't. There should be, and there should have been a long time ago, just to put the fighters first, and that's what we want to do.
Definitely, for sure. Just quickly moving on, I'd be silly not to ask you about Callum Smith taking on Joshua Buatsi on a mega card on 22nd of February. Yeah, it must be exciting for it. As you say, like, I know Callum, I spoke to Callum before his fight, obviously his comeback fight in Birmingham, and he said, he sort of lost the hunger a little bit, but he's got it back, and he's got it back for a big fight with obviously big implications for a WBO interim on the line.
Yeah, he has lost hunger, but he's lost the hunger he's lost the hunger for money. It's not money that's motivating him.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that like being big-headed for him. He's made plenty of money out of boxing, and it's not the money that's motivating him. Whereas towards the end of my career, it definitely was with me. I imagine it's the case with a lot of fighters when you come towards the end. But it's the titles, and he'd probably take less money to fight for the title than more money with no title, or maybe no title just doesn't motivate him. But the fact that there's a title will motivate him. He wants to be a world champion. He wants to be the best light heavyweight in the world, and he wants to win, another world title at a different weight. And I respect him so much for that as a brother, as a fighter, and he is my real brother. I'm not using that word like a lot of people do to call the mate a brother, but he is my actual brother, and obviously watching what he's doing and watching what he's done over the years from when he's been a kid. I'm so proud of him, the fact that he's still getting out of bed and wanting to go and push himself and push his body through the hell that it takes in training camps to fight people like Joshua Buatsi and Artur Beterbiev and all the other fighters that he's fought recently. Uh, it's a massive show, as you say. It's a big show. It's a brilliant opportunity for Callum to become a two-weight world champion, and a good opponent to Joshua Buatsi to do so. It's a good fight. It's a hell of a card. It's a fight that I'm very confident Callum can win and look good in, and show his experience and his ability and the power and the strength that he has at light heavyweight.
Definitely, and I think it was especially this fight. It was something that was always talked about when they were both in Matchroom, and I think when Buatsi left sort of Matchroom, it felt like we missed the boat for that fight. But I think the consensus is, it's very much sort of the number one and two light heavyweights in the country and on a world level. So yeah, there is this has been brewing for some time. This fight.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I've always felt that. I've always felt that Crown's number one, and Boatti's was the best out of the rest of them. And it used to frustrate me a little bit when I'd see people online, and listen, you have to remember who's saying it, obviously, but I'd see people online saying, "Oh, Boatti's the number one," or "Yard's the number one," and like, I just used to think if he's all forgot about Callum or something, because for me, Callum's number one, but Boatsi for me was the real deal out of the rest of them, and the one who I always felt and felt would do well. Now I'm going against that now because he's fighting me brother Callum, but I do agree it is between the two best best light heavyweights, and that's no disrespect to any of the others, you know. But for me, these two are the best two, and I've always said Callum's number one, and now's the chance to prove that.
Definitely. And I don't think I did want to ask you about Paul. Obviously, yourself and your brothers have done so much in the boxing game, but I do have to ask about your lad. Obviously winning a national
Yeah,
title. And that I have to say, when I saw that video of when the decision got announced, it's brilliant to see like the passion from yourself, obviously from him as well.
yeah.
Like that must have been a special moment for so long, and he's finally got one.
Yeah, Liam and Stephen looked like they were on springboards, they were on trampolines when he was jumping up in the air, and I must have watched the video about of 50 times at least, you know, just enjoying the moment. And I'm glad someone was able to film it and capture the moment, and you know, we're lucky for that. But it's been a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and I was laughing with him, and we only found well, it only got thought of and mentioned that after he'd won it, like that was the 20th national title that our house, let's say, has won, and it was his first, and I kept, not kept, I've been talking to him daily for years about boxing and just dropping little bits of advice in here and there and trying to guide him, but not trying to do it for him, let him find his own way. All I ever wanted for him was to maybe hopefully box for England and win a national title. If he did that, that's enough. That's the pressure off him, and he's just done both now. And the fact that he's won his national title after he's worked as hard as he's worked, you know, the kid dedicates his life completely to boxing. And it's tough for him sometimes. It's very hard for him. He's getting in the ring with a tons of vest on and Smith on his shorts, and ultimately straight away it's a lot of pressure to live up to. Sometimes he's around down. Sometimes, you know, there's a lot of eyes on him that wouldn't necessarily be watching just another fighter from a different club, but he's watching. It's Stephen Liam Callum's nephew and Paul's son, and he's always going to have that on over his head for as long as he fights. If he turns pro and he starts trying to make his way through the pro game, what's his ambitions to be a world champion? Well, your uncles have both done that, and British champion, your dad and your three uncles have all done that. It's like it's taken away from his achievements a little bit, but that's the game you're in. You know, you're following after a successful family and your uncles and your dad, and he's relishing every bit of it, and he's taking it all in strides. So the fact that he's won his first title, I was so happy for him. I think you can see in the video how happy everyone is for him because we knew what it meant to him. But he's already focused now on the next one and boxing for England and being involved in that GB setup and the England setup. And he's on the England setup. He's loving the fact that he is. He's doing his A levels at the moment. He's thriving. He's out and about. He's celebrating his win. But no, you know, he doesn't drink. He's really dedicated. But he's he's been having a few little desserts in the coffee shop. Now he can because he's been working really hard. But I'm delighted for him, and he's delighted as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you touched on that the pressure there because of like do you think I know I'm not sure sort of what the plan is, whether the idea is for him to turn pro. I know it's probably a couple of years away now, but do you think sort of people are going to want to see him turn pro? People are going to want to be tuned in because of what you and your brothers all done, and they're going to see like a new generation. Like, do you think do you think he'll do well, I guess, with that extra pressure?
Listen, I hope so. I hope people are wanting to tune into watching because of us and because of him, but you know, because they knew us or they watched us all fight. Because look, I see Campbell Hatton getting a lot of stick, and it's not fair whatsoever. It's not fair at all. He didn't ask to be Ricky's son. He's Ricky's son. His dad's a legend in his country, and his dad was a phenomenal fighter. And so many people in this country will fail to do what his dad did. So many fighters. There's not been many that's actually did what his dad did. So his dad was special. And he gets a lot of unfair criticism, but he also gets these good slots on shows and he also gets paid well. He's also got a good fan base because of it already, because of his dad. There's no shame in that. We see it with Conor Benn, we see it with Eubank Jr., we see it with all sons of fighters. We see it. You've already got a little bit of a ready-made fan base and platform, as you said, because they're naturally going to want to follow you because they liked your parents or they liked your uncles or your siblings or whoever it might be. So yeah, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. He's going to have pressure. He's always going to be compared to myself and his uncles, always. But he loves that, and it's hard not to compare him when you see how he fights because he's got a bit of my style. He's got a bit of Stevens, Liam's, Callum. He's got a lot of us in them, which is weird considering the fact that we just left him. I left him alone in the Rotunda, and I didn't want to train him. I didn't bother him. I didn't pull him out and do extra sessions with him and not, and I just left him to it. He was in the right place, he's at the right pace. And I know sometimes it might have frustrated him. He's asked me for sessions here and there, and I'd be like, look, you're coming along at the right time, don't worry, you're all right. And then all of a sudden now when he's at the right age, he's doing the extra sessions in the gym with Stephen and he's getting in every now and then with myself. And just technique and learning a few little things. He studies boxing all the time. He watches it all the time. I used to laugh and joke at him and say, I'm going to come in one day and you're going to have a woman on the telly with no clothes on. And every time I walk in his room, he's got Lomachenko on, or he's watching
Yeah.
an old fight, or, being a young, typical teenage lad. He laughs at me and says, get out. We laugh and joke. We've got a good relationship, but he just watches boxing and studies boxing
Yeah.
constantly. And it's constantly on his mind, constantly on his brain. He wants to be a world champion. He wants to turn professional, definitely, but he also knows that that's a while away yet. He's just won his first title. He's just turned 18. Got a long time to go. Yeah, he's got to try his best to get on the GB setup and do it the right way, the way we most of us all did it. And he knows the pitfalls. He knows the platform. He knows the way to go. And he wants to turn professional, win a world title, but not yet.
Mhm. Absolutely. And last one from myself, Paul. Did want to ask, obviously, someone mentioned Rotunda there, a guy training at Rotunda, Darren Till. Obviously, was scheduled to fight Tommy Fury on the 18th of January, but he has pulled out due to fears of getting head
Yeah,
kicked. I don't know what you sort of thought of the whole ordeal with all of that stuff.
you just said it yourself. He's pulled out of a fight with fears of something that might or might not happen. And it's ridiculous. I know Darren really well. I've worked with Darren in the past. In that contract will be a clause saying that if you use MMA tactics, you will lose all of your pace or a big percentage of your pace to the opponent. It's in every contract that Darren will have put before him because of his previous career. Look, I see it time and again in boxing, and these fighters nowadays are just not what they should be or not what they used to be. And there's a lot that are, and you're seeing them and they're winning titles and they're brave and they're tough and they're getting stuck in. And I don't want to start, name calling. I've got a lot of respect for the family, and you pulled out of a fight over something that may or may not happen. And there's got to be another reason behind it. There has to be. And
Yeah.
this is what's frustrating everyone when they're looking at it. The lad has never had a boxing fight. He's sparring in the gym. He's sparring really well. I think rumours are getting back to Tommy Fury in camp that Darren's knocking fellas out in the gym left, right, and centre because he is. And I just don't think he fancies the fight. And that's fine. No problem. If you can get more money for an easier fight somewhere else, and do that. But the fight was signed, the fight was announced. You should have had a press conference. Darren saying he's going to kick him in the head is building the fight up. Don't forget, these fighters are on a pay-per-view show. They will be getting a percentage of the pay-per-view buys. You want as many people to buy that fight as possible so you get paid more money for doing what you're going to
Yeah.
do anyway. It's common sense. It's basic common sense. You're going to say things that sometimes you might not mean, sometimes might be out of character for you, but you're trying to build a fight so people buy it and people watch it and people turn up to see it. So you get paid more money for it for doing the job that you're going to do. Everyone, you're doing a job. To then pull out because he said he's going to kick you, it just doesn't sit right with me. And no, I'm sorry, but no, I think something needs to be done quick for Fury to save face, Tommy Fury, and to come back and get the fight on because you can't pull off a fight over what you think someone might do or say.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
I was going to say, is it a weird one? Because let's say even if Darren probably remotely lifted his leg up, or he went to head kick him, like Fury's, he would win anyway by disqualification. There's a bit of a weird one. Like he's like almost sort of afraid of winning in a sense.
If he does anything that isn't boxing rules, he's going to be disqualified. Not only is he going to be disqualified, but he's going to make a lot of money out of that. But you're going to get his money as well.
Hmm.
It's the easiest decision that he could ever make. But he's gone the opposite way and he's pulled out after it's been announced. And now, listen, if he just doesn't fancy it, then he just doesn't fancy it. And I'm not saying that kind of golden there. I'm not trying to say that even being disrespectful. But what else does it look like? You've signed for the fight. The lad said he's going to revert to some dodgy tactics in the fight just to try and sell the fight and publicise it. And listen, it was a funny line. I thought it just Fury had no reply to it. Darren Till sitting on stage saying there's not a man in here that can stop me. And to be fair to him, there probably wasn't. I thought it was quite funny, but that's a press conference. I've 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 cringed at some press conferences I've seen in the past. I've made a fist with my face. I'm sitting with my toes curling with some of the things what I don't like hearing, but he sell fights and that's how it is. And I didn't think that was even that bad what he was saying. If it's going that bad, I'll just kick it. It's misfits. It's not. It's not. It's not, sitting there with the Ring magazine belt on the table and watching two purists. It's misfits. What do you expect? You're on misfits. You've fought on misfits before. against other people who aren't boxers, and you know how that works. So to pull out after the opponent said he might use some dodgy tactics is, yeah, as I say, it's not it doesn't look well for Tommy Fury.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, as always, a pleasure to speak to you. Always appreciate you taking time to speak to me this morning, mate. And yeah,
Thanks,
as
Lewis.
always,
Appreciate it, mate.
no problem, mate. Always trying to push Global Fighters Union as well, mate. So do
Yeah,
appreciate it, mate. Thank you. Top man. Cheers for your
thanks
time.
very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All the
Cheers.
best.